Hey guys, I hope y'all had a good weekend. This story is going to be from Huntsville, Alabama, and their encounter with a pretty terrifying creature, to say the least. If you want to support the channel, as always, there's links in the description. And that's about it. Let's jump in. Oh, don't forget to pull up a stump with me. Now let's jump into the story. And one last thing, this story was also posted on the paranormal board on September 27th, 2012, so it's a bit of an older one. And from here on out, I'll be talking from the point of view of the person telling the story. So this occurred when I was 16, and I have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land in Huntsville. My uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers that they put out into the woods for hunting or camping. So down south cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. Now, I know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they teased me pretty bad about it. So we collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp, and it's obvious something is a little off, a little weird. The air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, kind of like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpacked and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, this random older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us that we need to be real careful out here and stick together because there was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. His dad says okay. So we end up playing football and just kind of dicking around there. There's me, the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends, 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17. We ended up just dicking the day away and going back to camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers had kitchenettes. Tanner said he wants to run home. His family's property sits up against my uncle's, and asked if he can come out camping with us. My cousin, who I call Rooster, says he's going to go with him since it's getting pretty dark, and one of the girls says she's going to walk with them as well. It's about 7 o'clock and it's starting to get pretty dark. They all take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill and make some s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the same smell of ozone again, just like earlier. You could smell it over the smell of the fire. And it's this really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's just stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was kind of like that nasty, metallic, back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or something like that. We search the trailers and find out that nothing is on, and we all can smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking it down the path toward us and Rooster. Tan and the girl all come running into the clearing out of breath, and they don't even break stride. They all run right into the trailer, right by where the fire is. We all nope out of there, and then get into the trailers. They end up calming down, and even Rooster is crying his eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say screw it and are about to go outside to get the generator out of the shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, oh no, lock the front door right now. Ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are all bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty as hell. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, that maybe they should take on one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before, and then one of their pigs had come out ripped in half and eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually go at the live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle because coyotes usually avoid people, so they started walking back toward where they were camping. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. Kind of like that deer in the headlights kind of look. He says they all had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear stuff in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time in the forest, so they weren't exactly sure WTF it was. The girl says that she could hear something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back to the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said that they shouted out to him and told him that he was scaring the F out of them, and he was kind of being a dick. He says that when he realized the guy was facing away from them, so they keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell, and they say they look off into the forest to the opposite side, and it's the same guy standing backward, but he's like slightly closer in the path to them, almost as if he had moved when they blinked. So at this point they start power walking, and Tan keeps going. I should have taken the rifle. I really should have taken the rifle. As they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong even inside the cabin. They say that after that they started walking faster. That kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the woods, and they started booking it back to the trailer. The girl says she flashed her flashlight into the woods to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods, and the gibbering got louder and louder. And suddenly, when they were in line of the campfire, they could see from the light of the fire that something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track that they had just started flat out running as hard as they could toward the trailer to try and escape it. So now we're out in the woods, and we're at this point assuming and hoping that it's just some hillbillies or rednecks trying to screw with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin Junior starts going on about how he went to school with this native kid and was telling him about the goat man or something. We promptly tell him to STFU because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he keeps going on and on about how it's the goat man and how we're in the woods, or in his woods, blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of the goat man or any of that. But then a couple of years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a minim for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. To sum it up, it's basically a man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift, and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, but it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. I guess I'll keep that in mind then, won't I? Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going, the goat man's going to get in and get us, and all this other stuff. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all trying to figure out just what's going on, and if it's some animal or if it's people out there. And then all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like to this day, I haven't experienced anything like this. Usually smells fade away or get less and less. It was just literally there 1 second and not there the next. So after an hour, making around 9 or 10 at night or so, we stopped kind of pooping our pants enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it's just some guys trying to screw with us, so we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or something crazy like that. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay another night, and for the main part of the night, again, nothing happens. But at about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone finishes their story, I don't remember what it was about, the smell came back, and it's stronger than ever, and one of the girls literally starts vomiting right there on the spot. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is, and I say we should get inside, that this really isn't right, and we should have just left earlier. We all go back inside, and we're standing around, and my cousin just keeps going on about the goat man, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him up. All the while, I'm just feeling that something is very wrong, but I can't figure out just what it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 in them, and we got about 3 or 4 packs, so we grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine, and after a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how do I get 2 and everybody else only got 1, and I look at him like he's stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there's only 12 there. If he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just started screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get out, get out." She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up just what is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and I feel my heart sink. I run out of the cabin, or trailer, and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer, and everybody books out of the cabin. One of my cousins asked us just what was wrong, and I start counting us, and there's only 11 now. And I'm not screwing with anyone. My cousin verified there had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody really noticed the whole time, but there was an extra person. And then I realized that earlier that I kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you just kind of screwing around and having a good time, you kind of don't sweat the small stuff, and you don't always keep track of certain things, but I'm dead sure that somebody else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been in there for at least a whole day, eating with us. And what makes it worse is I couldn't figure out which one it was, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the goat man. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all just sitting outside. Eventually we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin, and there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door, and we try to explain just what happened. And the girl says that she realized something too, and that when she was about to say something, the person sitting next to her grabbed her leg really hard and leaned over toward her and said something that she couldn't understand, something unintelligible. So by this point we're all pretty scared, and we all huddle together again, and then I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and half are packing up our stuff. We all want to walk back home, but 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up, and some people think that we're just screwing around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get out of the woods. The girl's name was Kiera, the one that the goat man had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks that something bad happened, and she said that she just wants to go home, and that she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decided to split people up, and the first 4 that want to go can go. And I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's, and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this seriously, and I definitely don't want to be out in the woods for another night. So I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to let's get out of Dodge, we have to leave. Tanner leaves with them to go and get the rifle, and says that he's going to be back. So there are just 7 of us left now, and this is about 4 o'clock. It's around 5 or so, and he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting really antsy. The only reason that I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to get a gun. It's about 5:30 or so, when one cousin that did stay says that Kiera is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, she was so scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind the whole time the coppery smell has been gone, but now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them, and everybody that's left starts laughing at me and asking if I set this whole thing up to try and scare them. And I'm like, no, this is the goat man in our midst. I'm looking at them like I'm not bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them why would I play like that. So one of the girls goes outside to get Kiera. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kiera starts heaving. I don't know how really to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. And it was the fact that I thought this made me realize that it was not a sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear these big ass geese honking or something, some kind of birds or squirrels chittering, just something. So I step out the door and I tell her to come back in the trailer right now. She backs up into the trailer, and we lock the door and pull down all the shades except the one, and put someone there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there, and then there's a huge bang on the door. We all jump up and scramble around the living room of the trailer, and the banging is super loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and one of the other two are kind of giggling with nervous laughter, and me and the other two guys are just standing there grabbing our pants. Then we hear Tanner. He's screaming, "Let me the F in, stop playing." So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle, and there's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said that it was not Kiera standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with this kind of slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing toward the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer that he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without even him seeing her, she had been turning and inching closer toward him. He said that he just ran the rest of the way to the cabin thinking that it would open, and when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned around, and whatever it was now half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 6 of you here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops into your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it just slipped right back in. We looked out the window and there's nobody out there, so we recount everyone, and basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everybody says 8. I say, "Well, how many are here now?" And they all do the count and realize that there are now 7 people in the cabin. So Tanner had brought back a couple of boxes of ammo and his rifle, and he said that he told his dad there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was the goat man. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and then in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really terrified, but I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the hell out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them or something, and she's getting really scared that I'm not being funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, "Well, how do we know that the girl just wasn't Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the goat man, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that the goat man didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun and come back in the trailer?" So we all get into this huge argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has to be sneaking themselves into our trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst, it's something bad in the forest and is trying to screw with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and that we're trying to tell her that's a no-go because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off at about the same time that Tanner's cousin shows up. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer and we whisper to Tanner that if he's sure that's his cousin, he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp and then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and just looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at?" I figured she would meet me up by the cabin. Is she a little slow or something? And he asked if we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelt like a bloody hot pans all the way up the trail. And we all nope, and asked him what he's talking about. He had come down the same trail as Tanner had been using, and that he had come up on one of you guys' little buddies, standing in the middle of the trail looking at him all slack-jawed. He asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. Then she smiled at him, and he said that he just kind of kept walking, but she couldn't seem to keep up with him, and kept lagging behind him a little bit. He asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed help, and she just continued to stare at him. He said eventually he had been walking and turned around a bend in the trail, and when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, there was nobody. The trail was empty. He had assumed that she had taken some kind of shortcut in the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on, and he nopes the F out. Like I expected him to say that we were full of it, or something like that. He was 19 or something, I think, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. He says that when she kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him out, so he just decided to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little bit behind, and that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. He said eventually it got really strong, and she had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he had turned around to ask her what she said, she was right up on him, and he kind of stepped back from her. It was at this point that he asked her if she was okay, and if she wanted him to carry her back the rest of the way, and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had just put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking at her. So at this point, we know that all this stuff's real unless Tanner is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's absolutely peeing his pants right now. So they load up their rifles and we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. And to this day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge prank that my cousins played on me that just never got revealed, so I would just crap my pants for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross blood smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tanner and his cousin Reese get up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I'm not screwing with you when I tell you that there's this voice. It sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to, quote, talk, and it says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me in and stop effing playing." It made my nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's something I never realized until that moment, but all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to their talking. This stuff didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. YouTube those cats, that's what it sounded like outside the door. So no, I'm in full-on terror mode, and we keep yelling outside, quote, "Who is it? Stop effing around, man." And it just keeps saying, "In," or "Let me in," for almost 15 minutes. And then randomly, the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and stuff, and every couple of minutes it comes back to the door and says something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning. Reese says, "Man, screw this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up across the river from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like I seriously have never heard anything like this, and you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door and we can hear this thing keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes super low to the ground and crawling towards the cabin, and he shot at it. Pretty much that's how the rest of the night went. It was literally just screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear stuff moving out into the tree line, but it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had fallen asleep. Tanner had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, but he told me 2 days later after the whole thing was over. He said that he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us, and then he nodded off. Then he kind of realized something was wrong. and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the thing in the cabin and have it kill us then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we would end up killing ourselves, so we just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird, jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. So the story closes pretty weak, because from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tanner was a little jittery and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast and packed up and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys. So we just started walking, and then he said he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to do. We got a little bit up the path, and then he came running up and basically just jogged back to his house, and his cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tanner had gone back to lock up and look in there, and he said there was a window that we didn't lock, and that there was no screen on it. The window was all screwed up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing this all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up, and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group, and then looked him dead in the eyes, and just kind of sauntered off into the woods. So that story was pretty terrifying, I think. But what do you think? Do you think it was real, or do you think it was fake? I think in a lot of instances like this, that reality can be stranger than fiction. And I've had enough of my own experiences deep in the woods that I know that there's definitely something going on out there. Anyways though, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you'll pull up a stump with me again next time. Again, if you want to support the channel, there's links in the description. And yeah, I hope you all have a good week, good weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for pulling up a stump, and yeah, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.